not a Sumatra fan, and I know you are. So
Hey,
you need to
to be
change
honest
Ray's
with you,
opinion on Sumatra wrapper.
I'll be honest with you, I was not a Sumatra fan either. And it's not my first go-to be honest with you. You don't feel bad. I think it has a very divisive flavor profile. It's got this, like, I don't want to say sour, but there's something about Sumatra that doesn't necessarily appeal to me. That being said, Ernesto Perez Carrillo, who I've been working with for almost 10 years now, is a big Sumatra guy. And he's the one that kind of always is pushing Sumatra in the background, like, work with this. And now I find myself in a position where it's like a cook in a kitchen, and you look in the pantry and you see what ingredients you can cook with. Well, I can't cook with broadleaf right now. I can't really cook a lot with San Andreas Maduro right now. So Sumatra's there to cook with. So I'm playing more and more with Sumatra wrapper, but it's not my first choice. I've grown to like it ever since we did Headley Grange. But no, I don't feel bad, Ray. I'm right there with you.
Yeah,
be honest.
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, welcome everybody, and have a wonderful good evening. It is my pleasure to have you all joining us. Jon Huber, our special guest for tonight. I'm beyond grateful and honored, Jon, to have you on board for
Thank you.
this wonderful session. Thank you so much for joining us, and
thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I'll just share this with you guys before we get started. I wanted to give you a little bit of glimpse into my office space here. And yeah, it's the Barbie headquarters now.
How many Barbies do you have? How big is your collection now?
Oh gosh, it's endless. This is just the upstairs part. My daughter has the rest of it downstairs. But this is what I've been. This will be week 5 now that I've been working from home, and this has become my adopted office for the time being. So,
what's your rent?
Pardon?
What is your rent?
My rent?
Your rent for your daughter's bedroom.
Oh, well, just as long as I keep her in Barbie's. It's not even her bedroom. This is the playroom. This is just the upstairs playroom. Her bedroom has a whole different setup. But she allowed me to use this. And so now I'm on daily Zoom calls for work, obviously now, like everybody else in the world. And
turn her into an investor entrepreneur, buy a couple shares of Mattel stock. Knows what happens with Barbie.
There you go.
A billion units.
Crazy. She's 4. And I'm like, at this rate, like, what is it going to look like when she's 10, and that kind of thing. But anyway, this is what I'm working with. So
it looks beautiful.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. And as you guys know, like as always, please feel free to put your questions in the chat box. Let us know if there's anything that you would like to bring up, and we'll make sure that your voice is being heard. As Sabine mentioned, sometimes Facebook in these like challenging times is having a bit of a troubled moment itself. Like Instagram, everybody's on the internet, everybody's Zooming and streaming and Netflixing and YouTubing. So we will record the session and we will put it on Facebook in just a couple of minutes or right after the call, depending on how it goes with the internet connection. Jon, you had a pleasure a moment to talk to the guys that are joining us tonight, and I would like to kick things off with a little question regarding your start with Crowned Heads. I mean, you had plenty of experience within the industry and a wonderful track record, but I realized that when you started Crowned Heads, you took like a 4 weeks time period together with your business partners to actually sit down, take a moment, and just reflect on what is this company going to be about? What are our values and our set of beliefs that we really want to make shine with this company? How was that process for you?
At the time, tedious. I was like, let's just get on with this. I was very impatient. I was eager to start the company and announce it and get going. But in retrospect, it was 3 to 4 weeks of time, very, very well spent. And now I appreciate it because everything, what culminated from those 3 to 4 weeks is written in what we call our philosophy page on our website. And if you go back and read that, it took us every bit of 3 to 4 weeks to carve it down to that particular philosophy. But in hindsight, having that philosophy up in front of us each time, it made us adhere to a set of values that we knew, whether that be applied to a cigar or a t-shirt or a hat, that it had to be in line with that philosophy, right? So it made things going forward, the decision process, the creation process, that much easier, because we knew we had already established that philosophy. So everything had to line up for that philosophy. So at the time, to me, when I was younger, it seemed silly to spend that much time on it. It seemed like rhetoric. Now, 10 years later, I'm appreciative of the time that we spent to get the foundation set and then move forward.
Was that really something that like, did you take that experience from your time with CAO before, where you were like, let's do something entirely different?
Yes.
Let's leave that behind and start a totally new chapter, and we rather build this properly.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. That was one of the contingencies when Mike Condor, my business partner, when he approached me during our CAO time together, he said, "Do you want to do something afterwards?" And I said, "Yeah." I didn't know what that was going to be, and I said, "But I'm not interested in making CAO 2.0. I want to do something completely different. Give me the creative latitude to do it my way, and I'm 100% in." And so he was generous enough to give me that opportunity and said, "Yeah, okay, let's go." And there were things at CAO that I kind of look at it as my undergraduate degree, my time spent there from 96 to 2010. And the last 9 years plus have been, really my kind of graduate degree. And now I'm in a place where I can do things the way I always wanted to do them. Like, there was a lot of times with CAO, I didn't necessarily agree with the direction, but I would do my best to support that decision because it was the Oskiner family's decision or their choice. But there were things that I was like, okay, if I had my chance, I would not do it this way. I would do it this way, that kind of thing. So a lot of what we did initially was, when we first announced Crowned Heads, it was kind of to overcome that association, because every interview I did was like, it was a CAO interview. It wasn't really Crowned Heads. So it took us a while to create our own identity, where I stopped getting all the questions about my time at CAO, even though that was important. And now people pretty much identify me with Crowned Heads, which is nice, even though it's taken 9 years to do.
What are these values that you would say are like unique for Crowned Heads, and how do you see your personal evolution, or be it your professional one, from the undergraduate to the graduate degree?
Sure. I mean, for me, to answer this question in terms of CAO versus Crowned Heads, to me, what was always more important was the tobacco. The reason why you see 4 Kicks packaged the way it was when it first came out is because I wanted to make the box so understated and so plain that I wanted people to realize that the attention and the money and everything is going into the cigar itself. It's about the product. It's about the tobacco. Whereas my prior life with CAO, a lot of time was spent on the packaging, which actually culminated with a project called Vision, which I don't know if anybody remembers this, but this was 2007, I think, probably. And the box looked like an iPod at the time, where it was white and you opened it and the box lit up on the inside. It was ridiculous. And my argument behind the scenes was, look, the consumer is going to think they're paying for this box. All the money's going into the box, and the cigar's an afterthought. Well, fast forward to Crowned Heads, I wanted it to be the complete opposite. I wanted it to be, people understood that what's important is the cigar and not the packaging. The presentation is nice. I mean, nobody wants to be served a steak on a paper plate, but you certainly don't need to have the presentation overshadow the product. So that was kind of my philosophy going into it. And that's what I took away, what I would do differently from CAO. So, and it's still to this day, it's the most important thing to me has always been the cigar. And then the sub-layer to Crowned Heads is that we wanted it to be an aspirational brand, which, what does that mean? I wanted it to be something that people aspire to, that they could connect to, that they could relate to the story of, here's 2 guys that are not of Cuban descent, that live in Nashville, Tennessee, United States, and we're able to create a premium cigar company and actually have some modicum of success. And I wanted people to be inspired by that story so that they could do whatever they wanted to do in their life and not just accept the status quo. So those are the things that we kind of really based the foundation on being A, the cigar is the most important thing, and B, let's create something that will inspire other people, that people will aspire to.
Even though there's this old saying in the industry that if you want to lose a lot of money, you better start your own cigar brand, right? How did you feel about that? Or was it just like, this is what we got to do, and however it plays out, let's see, and let's just give it a try?
Yes. I don't know if it's ignorance is bliss or what, but I always, even in my CIO days, I would just keep my blinders on, right? And I would just keep in my lane and just do whatever I can do and try to be the best at what I do. If you get bogged down and worry about things like finances and all of those other kind of things, it really detracts from what you're trying to achieve. I remember meeting a photographer in Los Angeles when I lived in LA long before the cigar business. And the most important lesson I think I've ever learned in my life came from this photographer. And he said, because I asked him how he got involved with photography. And he says, he goes, I just wanted to do something I was passionate about. And he told me, he said, if you find something that you love to do, not only will you never work a day in your life, but you won't have to worry about money because you're going to love it so much that you'll become good at it from doing it so much, and the money will follow. But if you just chase dollars and you just chase money, you'll never be happy. And that was like, whew, that was like the aha moment for me. And to this day, it's just kind of the way I've always looked at it. I've never worked a day since I've been in the cigar business because I love what I do. And I've never really, knock on wood, had to worry that much about money. I mean, you know, it's just a matter of being happy with where you're at monetarily, I suppose. I'm not a rich person by any stretch of the imagination, but I've never wanted to focus solely on money as my happiness because that's such a false positive, right? So, you know, that's what I just try to do, to stay in my lane and just try to create.
I think that's such a wonderful statement, and I couldn't agree more. Like, for me, it feels the very same way, but I realized it takes a bit of maturity in a certain way, personally and professionally, but it takes a lot of courage. And as you said, maybe it's a bit like having the blindfolds on and just going for it.
Yeah.
But it really feels that a lot of people within the cigar industry share that mindset. And also they had past experiences in other industries or other professions that they were into. There's a lot of musicians. We just had Abe Flores. Yesterday I was speaking with Matt Booth, who will be on Sunday this week. And even with Pete Johnson, you know, like all the other people who had other things that they did before. And I think it's also part of the creative process, right? Everything that you do sort of inspires you along your journey, no matter where you end. What other things were inspirational for you, and what other interests or maybe hobbies did you take with you into the cigar industry?
Well, for me, it was I had a different approach to it. It wasn't like I was a musician prior to this or I was doing anything else. For me, it was I just had so many bad jobs, right? I said so many, like I was down on my luck and I was miserable and living in LA in a lousy apartment. And, I mean, one of the jobs I had, to give you an example, I was a telemarketer for pet shampoo, dog shampoo, and indoor sun tanning products. And I had this book they'd give you. You'd live in this cubicle in this book, and you'd have to call these like pet shops and go, "Hi, this is so-and-so with Dr. Crystal's Pet." That was the hardest way to make a buck, right? So I suffered. I paid my dues. I lived on like bread and peanut butter for a week at a time. And I knew that I wanted to find what really made me tick, right? So I didn't know what that was. So I started to do a lot of soul searching, and I literally narrowed it down over the course of months to, I wanted to be involved with something that was made from the earth. What did that mean? It was just, I like the romance of something that's grown and not made by a machine, something that is got romance and history and tradition to it that has not come off of a conveyor belt. And I narrowed it down to two things: wine and cigars. And that's exactly how I got to this position. I'm like, that's interesting. And so I pursued the cigar thing, and I just moved out to Nashville, and I started writing letters to every company in Cigar Aficionado magazine. And I got rejected by everybody that would give me the time of day. Some people didn't respond to me, but even Gordon Mott, who was the senior editor at the time, wrote me a nice, go fuck yourself letter. I'm sorry if I swore, but it was nice. It was nice to even get on the radar where he could reject me, but I couldn't get hired even in a cigar store. I tried a local cigar store I just wanted to be involved with that process. And they wouldn't hire me for $7 an hour. My last ad in that magazine was a company called CAO International, and it was 830 Kendall Drive, Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm like, I'm in Nashville. What a weird coincidence that is. Called up, found out the owner's name, wrote the letter. So it was one of those things where it wasn't like there was a want ad for Cigar Guy or something. It was like I literally sat down and gave this a lot of thought and knew exactly what I wanted to pursue. And it was just a matter of getting my foot in the door. And I did. And that's why I say to anybody that has any aspirations to do anything, the only thing holding us back in this life is ourselves. Because if there's 10 of the people that want to pursue their goals and their dreams, 9 of them aren't going to pursue it because they're afraid of failing or they're afraid of not getting it. But the one guy that goes after it is probably going to get it.
Sabina put a question in the chat box, and I would like to dig a little deeper on that. Like, she asked, how did you do your soul searching? And like maybe a follow-up question on that is, did you have any like family background in regards to going to the earth or doing something like with your hands? I have that family background as well with my grandfather. He was from a wine producing region, and I only realized maybe 20 years into my own life that this is really where I needed to be. Did you have that as well? Or was it more like the telemarketing experience where you said, skip that? Opposite?
No, some of my fondest memories were with my grandfather, working in a garden. I grew up in a very urban area in San Francisco, California. But he had this, and it was one of these situations where the houses are like this. There's no land, there's no lawns, there's no trees. But he maintained this little, probably maybe 12 by 12 area in the backyard where he would grow vegetables, and we would till the earth, and I would work on the weekends in the garden with him, and then we would split a can of beer. And I was like 8 years old at the time, and it was just like, but those memories just stuck with me, just the dirt and the soil and the growing, and then the watering and the caring. And that really stuck with me. And then one day when I walked into a cigar store by accident, basically to buy a gift, the smell was what went bam. It was just like the combination of tobacco, cedar, smoke. I was like, I can't explain it other than it was like an epiphany, like this is where I want to be. And that led me to start the soul searching of, wait a second, there's something here. What is it that's drawing me to this? And I started to realize that it came from the earth, that there was this romance, this tradition. And, I was like into wine at the time too. So I was like, okay, I can go either one of these two directions. And I think I'll be very happy. So that's how I got into really just concentrating and focusing. What were the things that were drawing me to this? And I started to go back to my grandfather and to my experiences there in that garden. I was like, it's the agriculture. And to this day, the things that really keep me interested the most in our business is the agricultural aspect. I loved going down, looking at the fincas and learning how, the soil is treated, how the tobacco is processed, the fermentation, the cultivation. I loved being on the farms. And I think it was in my blood from my grandfather, to be honest with you.
And it took a lot of time, right, to find the proper partners you wanted to work with for Crowned Heads.
That part came pretty easily because Mike Conder, who's my partner, was my boss actually at CAO. And prior to that, he was a consultant. CAO was acquired initially by a company called Henry Winterman's in 2008, I believe. And Winterman's was later acquired by STG, which also owns General, which then absorbed CAO. So the whole big fish eating the smaller fish, eating the smaller fish. And so at the time in 2010, early 2010, we quickly realized that, CAO is going to be going bye-bye. And Mike just approached me. Excuse me for 1 second. And so to carry on the story, he approached me and said, would you like to do something together? And I didn't know what that was. And I said, absolutely. Because Mike and I had a very good working relationship. We're very friendly. And to this day we are. So that part came pretty easily. I was fortunate in that regard.
We had a question in the chat on that from Andy. Andy, maybe you want to bring that up yourself.
Uh-huh.
Hey John, how are we doing? Yeah, just a quick question. I understand you make cigars with Ernie, and
Yes.
you make cigars with the Garcia family in Nicaragua. I was just wondering what differs in the processes between the two factories and the two different families, I suppose.
To this point, we now work with 4 different factories, believe it or not. We work with Pepin, Garcia family, originally with Ernesto at Tobacco La Alianza. We also work with Drew State in Esteli, Nicaragua. And then we just started working with a smaller, lesser-known factory called Tabacalera Pichardo in Esteli, Nicaragua. So I've got basically 4 sources at this point. Each one very different set of circumstances to work with. To answer your question directly, working with Ernie, he's like, we're very close. I call him Padrino because he's like my godfather. Like he literally, we're that close. We talk about family, wives, children, what have you. Working with him on a logistical standpoint is different than the Garcias, because if I go to the Garcias and I say, okay, I want to do such and such, like Las Calaveras, it's pretty much vertically integrated in that all I've got to supply are the bands, right? They're going to supply the boxes, they're going to apply the cigars, the packing, everything. So it's very easy. It's almost soup to nuts, except for the cigar band. With Ernie, there's a lot of components that I've got to piece together. I've got to piece the box together. I've got to piece the bands together. Sometimes we need to find other sources for the tobaccos. It's a little bit more of a challenge to work with Ernie, but it's just he's such a great guy that, I mean, without Ernesto, there's no way I'd be talking to anybody here. I'd probably be working at UPS or something. Ernie has been just the best. So, I mean, I'm grateful to all of our factories and all of our suppliers. They're all really good people, but I always have a soft spot for Ernesto because he was the original. He was the first one that gave us a chance.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I think that could be a challenge really to work with 4 different manufacturers and still bring everything under one roof and keep a consistent crowned head signature. How do you make sure that you have that underlying, like you spoke about the corporate culture that you defined at the beginning, so it all needs to fit in snugly within that one direction and the one profile?
Yeah, to add more confusion to this, when we started Crowned Heads, I wanted to create a company that was almost akin to like the band. In other words, I wanted each album to sound different from the prior release. I didn't want, if you go back to CAO, everything was like blah, blah, blah by CAO, blah, blah, blah by CAO, CAO this, CAO that, CAO this, CAO that. You never really see Crowned Heads this, Crowned Heads that, because I wanted the creative latitude to create very different products underneath the portfolio. I wanted to create different sounds on each album. So Crowned Heads is just kind of like the umbrella, and then underneath it, you have all these different personalities living. What ties it together, I think, for us is just the flavor profiles. I think that over the last 9 years, we've created kind of a consistent, oh yeah, this feels like Crowned Heads to it, kind of a thing. And that just basically comes back to creating products that you personally enjoy. You know, I wouldn't release anything if I didn't personally want to smoke it. If I'm not just trying to chase a dollar and say, okay, I'm going to do this cigar with an Indonesian binder and we're going to do a 6x66 and it'll be kind of quirky, but people will buy it and we'll make a lot of money. I'm never going to do that. I'm going to create stuff that I enjoy, that speak to me. And then if it connects with an audience out there, that's the bonus plan. So I think that the tobaccos kind of unite us more than anything else. It's not really like the packaging or anything like that. It's just the feel. It's just the flavor. It's I don't know. It's hard to put my finger on it. But the challenge that we've run into in the last couple of years is how do you tie all those cigars back so people identify with Crowned Heads? Because now I've created this entity, but I've created all these different albums, so to speak. But how do people associate it with the band. So we literally started to put a footband on certain cigars that say Crowned Heads.
Mhm.
And that's one of the marketing ways we're trying to tie everything back so that people realize who's making the product.
And I guess it's a matter of your core philosophy. I mean, you do not necessarily have to keep that consistency throughout the decades and years. But if you do a new album with every single decade that comes along, or every 5 years, I mean, that's just the way you roll, right? There might be other companies that will always have that. These are the core lines, and they will stick to them no matter what. But also, I guess your palate changed over the years, right? You probably do not enjoy the same type of cigar as you did when you started.
Yes and no. I think people's palates evolve, much like, when you have your first glass of wine, it's probably going to be a Chardonnay or a Cabernet Sauvignon, and then you start to go into the Pinot Noir, then you're into, before you know it, you're drinking Petit Syrahs and Bordeaux's and Cabs, right? So you kind of want that bigger as we progress. But I pretty much, like, my very first cigars were very mild cigars, and they were some of my last mild cigars. I just gravitated towards something that had a bigger kind of fruit forward flavor profile to it. So right away I started cutting my teeth on pretty bold cigars, and that's where I kind of felt like that's where I wanted to taste. Even today, like to this day, like the first cigar I would start off the day with is not going to be a Connecticut shade cigar, because people think, oh, that's a great morning cigar. Well, it is, but for me, when my palate's fresh, I want to taste something that's kind of got a big flavor profile to it. So, if my palate did evolve, it was a very quick evolution. Mm-hmm. So I like cigars that are robust, rich, big, not necessarily strong and intense and peppery, but just something that is well balanced, that's rich, that, there's a lot of good stuff out there right now, to be honest.
And I think that's also a highly interesting point. We bring that up a lot during our conversation with different manufacturers and people where we make this clear distinction between strength, like the nicotine impact, and the complexity in terms of aromas and flavors. And I realized that a lot of people who spend some time in the industry, you probably start a bit milder, then you soon move into the really full-bodied, strong cigars, and at some point you probably cut back a little on that strength, but what you're really looking for is the elegance and the finesse and the complexity and the depth.
Correct. One of my mentors in this business is a gentleman that used to work for Cigar Aficionado magazine many years ago, a guy by the name of George Brightman. And I see Barry Abrams here too. I swear, I was like, is that Barry? Hi, Barry. How are you, Bubby? Good to see you. But George Brightman is a gentleman that used to work for Cigar Aficionado, and he kind of took me under his wing when I was very green. Like, I'd been in the business for a few months, but I knew that was a guy that I got to pick his brain. And I knew that was the authority. That magazine was like, that was the Bible, right? So I wanted to learn as much as I possibly could. He taught me that, and right during the era of the big heavy cigars like VSG, right? Like, everything was like, can you smoke this? It's got to be strong. Can you actually literally smoke this? It was like a challenge. He says, cigars shouldn't be a challenge to smoke. They should be a pleasure to smoke. They should be complex and rich and not offensive and aggressive. And I never forgot that. And and that's something I think, especially in the domestic market, that people tend to forget. Seems like they want to almost be challenged to smoke a cigar. Does it make me sweat? Do I have to, you know what I mean? It's like, that doesn't sound enjoyable to me. So I always go back to what George said, and I just kind of think about, what's the cigars, the best cigars that stand out in my mind are ones that were balanced and finessed, not necessarily mild, but just rich and complex. Those are the cigars that speak to me, that stand out in my memory. Not harsh, under fermented, aggressive tobaccos.
How do you make sure that you bring that complexity to the table and into your cigars? Do you leave a lot of that to Ernie or to the Garcia family, or do you go and approach them with a clear brief and say, like, this is exactly what we're gonna have, and this is exactly what we need in terms of tobacco?
I'm very fortunate to work with some of the best people in the industry that make me look like I know what I'm doing. the Garcias, Ernesto, working with Willie Herrera at Drew Estate, working with Pichardo or Tabacalera Pichardo. These people make us look better than what we are, right? We're brand owners for the most part. And I speak we is because there's a lot of guys that, I won't say who it is, but there's a lot of guys that will perpetrate that they're master blenders and they know all of this, that, and the other. But honestly, you're as good as the people you work with, and you're as good as the tobaccos that those factories work with. Pete Johnson back in 2014 gave me some of the best advice that I've gotten in this industry as well. And he said, you know, when we start with good tobaccos, it's our job, meaning the brand owners, right, not to fuck it up. That's the hardest part of our job. Don't screw it up. And, you know, like I said, I'm fortunate to work with some really good people that have access to really good tobaccos. And, you know, obviously I don't have any, 9 years into this, I'm not afraid that I'm going to release something from either Ernie or the Garcias or Drew or whoever that's going to be not right. I have enough confidence in all these people at this point that I know when I have a box, it's going to be ready to smoke right off the truck. It's not going to be like, oh, these got to sit in the warehouse for 2 weeks or 2 months. Everything gets better with age, but everything should be able to smoke right off the truck, I think. Mm-hmm. And with these people that I work with, like I said, I'm very fortunate, and just them are the best in the industry.
You spoke about Pete Johnson and about a couple of other brands, and there's a lot of good stuff on the market, actually. Sure. And there is this term of boutique brands that I think is a little overused, and you probably agree on that, because sometimes it feels like everything that is not Altadis or like General and STG is like a boutique brand.
Right.
How would you define the term, and what sort of makes a brand authentic? Because I know that's also a value that really speaks to you. And what is that boutique thing for you?
You're right to the point that boutique is like an overused term. It's like a few years ago, I got tired of hearing the word passion. It was like everything was passion, right, in the business. And it was like, okay, let's find a synonym for passion. Boutique, yeah, to me, you can look at it two different ways. One, you can look at it as volume. But where do you draw a line? Is boutique 1 million and less cigars per year? Is boutique 5 million and less cigars per year? I don't know. To me, boutique is more of a way of approaching the craft as opposed to how many you produce. Because I think you can be a bigger producer and still have that boutique mentality. And I think Pete's a good example. He's probably, I don't know what his volume is, but I'm going to guess somewhere 2.5 million, maybe 3 million cigars a year, which I would love to be doing that. But we're not. But I would still consider him boutique because he still is I consider him as an artisan. Whereas some of your larger companies that maybe even if they make a small batch of something, I wouldn't consider them boutique because they're a corporation driven by P&Ls and forecasts and reporting to stockholders. And so you can't be boutique in that, you know what I mean? It's like Budweiser trying to make craft beer. Yeah, you can buy craft beer companies, but you're never going to be a craft beer. It's just the mentality. It's the philosophy. That's how I define boutique.
We had a wonderful conversation with Jon from Illusion Cigars, and we spoke about that a little bit as well, where he said that like sometimes you just have a pail of tobacco, like a pilon of some super refined stuff, and you really want to do something with it, and then you need to think about how can we actually work this into our lineup, into our company, because it will probably last for 1,000 cigars. Right. Would you still take like some of these projects on board and be like, let's do a special album, and we're just going to have 1,000 cigars, but who cares? Let's put it out there.
Yeah, it depending upon, you know, the reason. Everything's got to exist for a reason. If it has a good reason to exist, I would absolutely entertain it. Fact of the matter, end of last year, we were considering doing a project with Ernesto that was literally right around the 1,000 cigar area. And I'm like, I started to think to myself, why are we going to even bother? Like 1,000 cigars, it's not even going to last. It's like, it's going to come and go. But these particular cigars were cigars I found in one of his bins in the aging room that have been there since 2011. And I smoked one, and I was just like, why aren't you doing something with these? And he says, well, I made them for somebody and they backed out of the deal. And I'm like, put my name on this bin because we'll do something with these. We'll figure it out. So yeah, I'm going to do something with it eventually. I just, that was pre-COVID, obviously, but if it has a good reason and it's good enough to bring to the market, sure. Typically, the smallest project that we would tend to touch on a normal basis would be about 5,000 cigars.
Mhm.
Like I get approached a lot by like stores and stuff. Could you do a store exclusive? And to make it make sense, it's got to be at least 5,000 cigars, because what people don't realize, it's just as much work to produce 5,000 cigars as it is to do 50,000 cigars. You still have to create the blend. You still have to validate the tobaccos. You still have to age everything. You still have to create a band, a box, all that, whether it's on a smaller number or a big number. It's just the cost per unit comes down as you get bigger, but it's still the same amount of work.
We had a great follow-up question on that from Andy regarding regionals.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys, you spoke about Drew, and you make a couple of your regionals for Hawaii and Ohio with Drew, and you make the Tennessee Waltz and other ones as well. My question was, is that a nod to Cuban regionals, or is that a way to give back to areas in the US?
It's definitely not a nod to Cuban regionals. We're not on that level. It started off with a cigar called Tennessee Waltz. And Tennessee Waltz, we came out with that in 2014. And all it was really, I was like, I want to do something that will give back to our state, that really they were the first ones to embrace crowned heads. And so I wanted to give something back to them and make a state exclusive, not a regional, but a state. And we did. And then we followed that up with a state exclusive for Texas, because we had just hired a rep in Texas, said, hey, can I get that as well? Because I think we could really sell a lot of it here. And then we were approached by a good friend of mine, Marvin Chang, in Hawaii, that wanted me to do a state exclusive for Hawaii, which changes the Vitola and the blend every year. So we've been doing that since 2015. And then the most recent one was for Ohio, because we had developed enough of a following in the state of Ohio. And it ties back to my wife was born in Ohio. So her maiden name is Land. So it became Buckeye Land. And so it just has to make sense. And it's not like a regional exclusive, it's a state exclusive. So it's just, where we have the support, we try to do something special for those people.
Let's get one going for Germany, and then we can get it in the UK then, right?
You know what? We spoke about this before we started, but the German distributor, Dalai Zagaran, it approached me 2 years ago to do a German exclusive. And I was on board with it. And I would send him blends that I thought would work, and he would kick it back and say no. And I literally, my last attempt at that was a cigar that I thought, okay, he's definitely going to like this, because he told me this checks all the boxes, right? And he passed on it. And that particular blend that he passed on went on to become a cigar called Juarez, which we released last summer, and it's done extremely well for us.
Yeah,
sellers. So
I have a box of the Juarez upstairs, actually, and I was just about to say I'm a big fan of you guys. I've got a few boxes on the way, so thank you for giving up your time and speaking to us all.
You're basically smoking a German exclusive right there, so if it makes you feel any better.
There you go.
Jon, where do you see the difference in terms of palate and the consumer behavior, the cigar culture, between the US and Europe or even Asia?
I can't really speak to Asia, because I think we just now signed some distribution agreement with like Malaysia, but we haven't really tapped into that market. So I can't really say. As far as Europe, I'll be honest, I'm not that familiar with the market. I'm only familiar with my interactions on social media, and the following apparently that we've created in Germany has been really, really strong, surprisingly to me. Because again, I go back to saying, like, I had no aspirations to go past the United States. And we were approached by Salih, and he says, would you like us to be your distributor? I'm like, okay, sure. Didn't know what to expect. I didn't think anything of it. Now, 2-3 years later, we've got a following over there, and I've got guys that are tattooing CYOP on their knuckles and Las Calaveras skulls on their arms, and they're wearing our hats, and they're all about it. And I love to see that. They're very, very, the fan base we've created there is very enthusiastic towards the brand, and that makes me happy. I mean, I even joke and I say, if I could just take what we do in Saarbrück in Germany and translate it to the United States and spread it out, we would have a business, because they're just so nuts about everything we do. And I love it. I love it.
And you build a lot of that followership through social media, obviously.
Yeah, only exclusively. That's really our only point of contact.
Do you do your social media yourself, or do you have like people who support you on that? Or was there ever like a philosophy about how you approach the different social media channels?
So my philosophy about social media is that it has to be authentic. It should, these companies that hire people to do their social media, it kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it? It's like you're removing yourself from the equation when you should be the equation.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, yes, I do all the Instagram. Yes, I do all the Twitter. The only other platform that we're on that I have nothing to do with is Facebook. Simply because there's something about Facebook that just seems invasive and not good to me. So I just kind of like, eh. But yeah, I do all the Instagram. I do all the Twitter. That's me. I get that on DM sometime, like, is this Jon? And I'm like, yeah, who else would it be? And then people are surprised because they think that there's this company that we've sourced this stuff out to, but it's an oxymoron. Why would you do that? It's not authentic. So yeah, I do that. So I take all the pictures. I do all the stuff. Yeah, it's fun. I like it.
I think authenticity is a value that's really hard to sort of come by in the era of digital transformation and especially the corona situation that we're all living through at this very moment. It really is a new era, and we see another step in digitalization and obviously things like this here. Even our Light 'em Up lounge sort of came through the corona crisis, but it just feels so much harder to dissect the authentic from the fake in the world of social media, isn't it?
I don't know. I can kind of smell a poser. In our industry, I can kind of smell one. But I've been doing it for a while, so I kind of know the cast of characters on a personal level. Yeah, to me, authenticity comes back to honesty and integrity. If you have integrity and you stand for what you believe in, and vice versa, and you believe for what you stand for, then that's honest. And when you're honest, you're being authentic. You're being real. Now, if I was to take pictures of myself smoking a cigar in a suit in a lounge, or wearing a guayabera in a finca on a horse, that's not me. That's not who I am. Not only would you see a poser, you would smell that it's inauthentic. When you present yourself as you really are, when you just peel it all away and say, this is me, better or worse, that's authentic. That is when you're being true to yourself. About 10 years ago, I was at a trade show, and a gentleman by the name of Michael Herklotz was there. And I've known Michael since, he used to work at Davidoff and before Nat Sherman and all that. And now he's become like a public figure almost. Mm-hmm. But this one year, I remember going to the trade show and I said, I'm going to wear a tie and a suit and the whole thing. I look very corporate, And Michael came up to me, and Michael, to me, is the best dressed man in the cigar business. Even on his sloppiest day, the guy looks like he came off the cover of GQ or Esquire. And he came up to me and said, hey, Jon, how you doing? I said, oh, I'm okay. He says, you look miserable. I said, I do. And I was like shocked, but he could read right through me. He says, you look miserable because you're not being yourself. This is not you, man. And that was like bing. And it showed. So I was trying to be something I wasn't. I wasn't being authentic. I wasn't being who I was. And somebody picked up on it right away. And that really kind of resonated with me. So to this day, what you see is what you get. The way I'm presenting right now on Zoom is the way I would be at a trade show, at the IPCPR, PCA, TAA, whatever. That's who I am. And that's how I feel comfortable in my own skin. So that's really, really important for authenticity, in my opinion.
Speaking of Michael Herklotz, and obviously a lot of so-called influencers came up in the last couple of years. Do you feel like that this influencer thing sort of changed the cigar industry as a whole?
I don't really see it that way. I look at Michael as a cigar guy before I look at him as an influencer. I think he's kind of morphed into, the fashion and wine, and he kind of covers a myriad of topics. And I get that. That's cool. But I'll always look at Michael as like a cigar guy, because he's been doing this for 20 years too, I think, probably. Ever since he was a kid, pretty close to it. So, I don't really, what bothers me is like if I go on Instagram, or I do a search on cigar or whatever hashtag, and I see, obviously there are some cigar smokers that are women that are genuinely interested in the hobby and the craft, and I get that. But then there's also this other sector that seem to be like, they set up a fashion shoot, like on some $10 million house in Miami on the water, and they're smoking cigars, looking, it's like it's completely fabricated. You can tell it's not real. I'm trying to gain attention. Look at me. I can appeal to a cigar male dominated sector. And that part bothers me, because it's not genuine. It's being done for other reasons, and I don't see it being genuine. And I just like, I'm not going to give any attention to that. I get mentioned in certain stories or whatever, the brand gets mentioned in stories, and I can tell that women are trying to use the brand as a platform to gain more views. And I'm not even going to bother with that. I'm not going to support you. If you're genuinely into it, that's different. But for the most part, I see there's a lot of attention seekers out there that really just wanted to get followers or clicks or whatever it is that they monetize.
There is this term that gets thrown around a lot as well, which is lifestyle, right? And cigars obviously have a bit of a lifestyle momentum, but it's a very fine line. Where does the product and the cigar end, and where does the other lifestyle come in? And like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your last position with CAO was director of lifestyle marketing, wasn't it?
You've done your research. Very good, Reinhard.
Of course.
Very good. Yes. You want to know how that happened? Let me interrupt you for a second. So we had just gone through a structural reorganization, as it were, because STG's acquisition of Henry Winterman's, and some people got let go, and then they restructured the marketing department, and they said, you're going to report to Mike Conder, but you need a title. At the time, I made a business acquaintance that worked for Red Bull energy drink. And I remember his card said Director of Lifestyle Marketing. And I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. So I said, okay, here's my title, Director of Lifestyle Marketing. And that's exactly how it happened. And they said, okay, that's cool. That's fine. So I was a self-appointed Director of Lifestyle Marketing. So anyway.
What did that term mean to you back then?
Well, at CAO, it meant a lot of things, because, we were operating on a different platform. We were, part of my job was hosting parties for the IPCPR, where we would book rock bands from Leonard Skinner to Tommy Lee from Motley Crue, and I would have to fly them in and do the writer and get the sound organized. It was like almost like a rock promoter at one point. It was crazy. So there was a non-cigar related element to that position, where everything from designing the merchandise and apparel to, having these parties, to getting our stuff, involved with HBO and The Sopranos and all of these things. So it was a myriad of different things. Now today at Crown Heads, cigar lifestyle means something completely different to me. To me, it just goes back to kind of this fraternity that we've created, this brotherhood, sisterhood, if you will, of people that share the same passion for cigars. And that to me is the lifestyle. It's not about parties and, all this stuff that used to be. To me, it's just more about the connections we make. It's about the unity of people that smoke cigars. I always look at cigars like the common denominator. Like, you can go into a lounge and there could be a doctor, there could be a neurosurgeon, there could be an auto mechanic, there could be a plumber. And if they're all smoking a cigar, you have a common denominator where you go, hey, what are you smoking? And you start talking about cigars. You talk about brands, In real life, those 4 people may have nothing to do with each other and may find it hard and awkward to even converse. But in the setting of a cigar store with cigars, it breaks down a lot of barriers. And that to me is what is the lifestyle.
the one positive aspect of the lifestyle element, I think, is bringing in new people to that brotherhood and sisterhood, right? Because it just opens up other fields of expertise or other industries, and it gives you that little opportunity to bring in people who probably have never smoked a cigar before, but then through their interest for music or fashion, design, arts, literature, whatever it might be, this could be an entry point for them to get into the world of premium cigars.
Yeah, no, one of the things that I really like is when it kind of broaches the mass appeal. I'll give you an example. Last night I started to watch a documentary series on ESPN called The Last Dance, which, if you guys don't know, it's a documentary in 10 episodes about Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls from 1997 to 98, behind the scenes thing. Very fascinating. But in one of the opening scenes, Michael Jordan, who is arguably one of the best athletes of the century, right? Huge, larger than life, is smoking a cigar, and he's got like a little spirit port here, and he's openly smoking the cigar, just like so, when the public looks at this and they see Michael smoking a cigar, it's a whole different level than if they see me walking down the street smoking a cigar. They're like, now it's acceptance. Now it's crossed over. It's like, whoa, wait a second. That's not a bad thing. Because Michael, you know what I mean? And he was, done interviews with Marvin Shankin and Cigar Aficionado. He's been on the cover. And to have somebody with that kind of provenance show his love for cigars, he didn't have to smoke a cigar in that interview, but he chose to. When I see that really kind of goes, okay, that's pretty cool. That's part of the lifestyle. That's part of it, because it's not only just cigar geeks like me creating this lifestyle. It's also guys like Michael Jordan, right? So that's a whole different level.
Would you feel that Crowned Heads is probably a cigar brand that is more for the experienced aficionado, passionado, somebody who's already into the game? Or what would be your entry point? Like, how would you approach somebody who's never smoked a cigar before and then comes up to you and he wants or she wants to try a Crowned Heads?
How would I approach somebody that's never smoked a cigar before? I would probably, just depends who that person was and what how interested they really were in it. I mean, gosh, that's a tough question, to be honest with you. It's because the first cigars I smoked weren't CAOs. In fact, the first cigar I ever smoked was a Macanudo Hyde Park, and it was the last Macanudo Hyde Park I ever smoked. No offense, but that's just, it didn't do it for me. Yeah, I mean, I think whatever brand that somebody gravitated towards, whether it be visually or they've heard about this, whether it's a Monte Cristo from the United States or if it's a Altadis General, whatever product, as long as they try it and they become interested, it's like a gateway drug, right? It's kind of like, let's get them in there, and then they can go further down the rabbit hole and see, oh, wait a second, there's Illusione, there's Tatuaje, there's Foundation, there's Steve Saka, there's Dumbarton, there's Crowned Heads, there's all this other stuff here. If they just get involved with it and then want to get deeper into it, that's fine by me. I mean, it doesn't have to be. I don't have any illusions that people are going to just smoke Crowned Heads product. That would be a travesty to me, because there's so much more out there to experience that is really good stuff. And I don't only smoke Crowned Heads. I smoke Cubans. I smoke stuff from Pete. I smoke stuff from Matt, everybody, Willie, you name it. I mean, we all smoke each other's stuff. Life is short. Why would you just one thing, So yeah, to answer your question, I would say it wouldn't matter to me what they started with, as long as they enjoyed the process and started to learn more about the craft that's behind it. One of the things that really irks me is to go to a trade show or even a cigar store and see a cigar in an ashtray that was smoked like maybe an inch and somebody put it out. I think that's so disrespectful to the craft. That's like a huge pet peeve of mine. When I see that, I'm like, that person didn't understand how many people literally were slaving over that product, making no money, sorting tobacco, fermentation, cultivation, harvesting, whatever, you name it, and then bunching it and then rolling it and then aging it. Now, this is a process that takes so much, and to just like disrespect it and go, oh, this was unsmokable here. I've never done that. I don't care if I don't care for the flavor. I'm still going to smoke the cigar because I know what was involved in getting that product done. That's to me, it's disrespectful. So I don't even know if that answered your question.
Well, absolutely, certainly, and I mean, palates and tastes are different, and you just got to be curious, and as you said, pay respect to everything that went into it, and like for me, every single cigar just makes me more grateful for this wonderful world that we're in, and for this beautiful industry we all get to somehow relate to, be it professionally or just out of personal interest and as a hobby. But it and I couldn't agree more. Like my background in wines and spirits, and going back to my grandfather's story, these products are some of the most mesmerizing in the world, and every single one of them is another door that can open a whole new world. And I just couldn't agree more. And a great follow-up question on that from Ian, going back to the product and going back to the tobacco, regarding the blends. Ian, please.
Thanks, John. It's really interesting. And just a quick point, just to say I was put on to Jericho Hill by Corona Cigars in Lake Mary. And the guy there, I said, what should I try? And he put me onto that. So I might not have come across you but for that. So just a hat tip to them. Just tell us a bit how you go about blending a new cigar. What's your process for coming up with a new blend?
I don't blend. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that I use a half a Seco and 2 Ligeros and that. That's not me. I'm not going to lie to you. Look, I look at it this way. If I have a toothache, I'm not going to pull my tooth. I'm going to go call the dentist and have a professional do it, because that's what he does best. If I have an idea for a product that I know my way around tobaccos. I mean, let's not say I'm a complete idiot. I know that, like Jalapa is going to give you a little bit sweeter or earthier. Esteli is going to have a little more spice and pepper. I have a general idea where I'm going, right? And I know like what wrapper I want to use, or maybe what priming we can go take it to. And then I go to the doctor, or the dentist rather, and I say, Jaime, Ernesto, Pichardo, Willie, this is what is in my mind. Can you help me bring this to fruition? And they do the blending. And then I get to validate it and basically co-sign it. That's my job, is to basically co-sign the blend.
Can you say a bit more about the priming? I am not sort of too much on the technical side. So what does that involve?
Basically, a tobacco plant has 7 primings. The priming that's the highest priming is, let's say it's a 7 priming, right? And that's going to have had the most exposure to the sun. So as the plant starts to grow, this top priming here is going to have the most time with the sun. It's going to give you your most body, the best flavor. Those leaves probably tended to come out the darkest once you ferment them. So I'll give you, for instance, 4 Kicks, right, is a Habano wrapper grown in Ecuador. And we typically use 5s and 6s on the priming to give it that Colorado brown color on the 4 Kicks. Well, in 2012, Ernie has sorted some bales, and we had some primings that were probably 7s because they were much darker. They came out much darker, and he said, hey, I've got this whole, bale of tobacco that are probably 7s instead of 6s or 5s. It's considerably darker. Do you want me to mix them in with the regular production 4 Kicks, and we'll put them at the bottom of the box, and they'll still look color sorted, but when you get to the bottom, you're going to have some really dark cigars. I said, no, don't do that. I want the entire box color sorted so that it's uniform all the way through the 24 cigars. He said, well, what do you want me to do all this tobacco? I said, I got an idea for it. And that became Mule Kick, which has now become a semi-annual kind of a thing for us. But what I did was I took the darker, higher priming 7s so that the cigars were darker, and we tweaked the blend a little bit, and that became our first limited edition. I was just trying to use what we had without wasting the tobaccos. So that's what I meant by primings.
Thank you.
John, let's frame it differently then. When not starting with the blend, but where do you start in your creative process when you come up with a new project?
It can go one of 2 ways. It can go with, I have a concept in mind, or it could go with, I have a flavor in mind, and then the concept comes later. For instance, Headley Grange, which was our sophomore release, I had a flavor profile in mind. And we started with that flavor profile, trying to get to where I really said, okay, this is it. And then I came out with the idea of what the name would be and the story behind it, right? The idea being, I sold Ernie on this concept where I wanted this. He says, "What do you want it to taste like?" I said, "I want it to taste like the drums sound on Led Zeppelin's When the Levee Breaks." Because I couldn't verbalize how I wanted this thick, heavy, plodding, dense, chewy mouthfeel to the smoke. But I knew the drums sounded like that flavor. That's the only way I could equate it, right? And if you go back and you listen to John Bonham's drums, it's really thick, heavy, dense. Like the first 6 seconds of that, like I listened to the first 6 seconds. So that was the idea in my mind. So I played the track for Ernie, and he was a drummer, and many years ago. And he said, "Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about." I was like, brilliant. And that's what started the process, were those drums. And then once I got to the blending part with Ernie, where he was giving me samples, I'm like, oh yeah, that's it. This is it. This is it. I remember the day that we happened upon that final product. We were in the Dominican. We were coming out of lunch in this little Italian restaurant. He gave me a cigar to smoke, and I was like, oh God. I said, "Padrino, this is it. What is this?" And he's like, "That's what you wanted, right?" And that was it. And then I figured out the reason to call it Headley Grange was because of where those drums were recorded. Was in an old house, and I don't, if I'm butchering this, Birmingham in the UK. There's an old house called Headley Grange, and that's why I named it Headley Grange. So that the concept started the flavor profile I was seeking, and then came back to the concept. Other things like, gosh, we've got this one cigar we're coming out with this summer, and it's with Tabacalera Pichardo, and they're the ones that make Juarez. Phenomenal factory that nobody knows about really at this point, but they're making some great cigars. And this goes back to a blend they had approached me with, like literally in 2017. And we've been playing with it back and forth. And so now we've got this blend that is, I was like, wow, this is special. So it started with the blend, and now the concept being, it took us about 1,000 days of this relationship. So knowing them for like 1,000 days, we're going to call it Mil Dias, which is 1,000 days in Spanish. So that kind of just came as a result of the blend. So it's just, there's so many different ways we go about it, but it just, one thing usually leads to the other. I don't have a set thing where I kind of go, okay, I got an idea, now let's plug a cigar into it. It's not like that at all.
And very interesting point that you're bringing up, but the naming of the individual cigar releases that you do. I guess you also have different approaches, or like different parts of the evolution process when coming up with something new, where you have that idea of this is what the cigar is going to be named after, right?
Yeah, I do have that sometimes. Tennessee Waltz is one of them. We wanted to do something for the state exclusive for Tennessee. And the first thing that came to my mind was this song that my grandfather used to whistle when I was a little kid. And I asked him one day, like, why that song? Why do you whistle it? And he says, it's the first song that was playing at the USO dance when he was in the Army that I met your grandmother. Like, Tennessee Waltz was the song playing, and he went up to ask her to dance. And for sentimental reasons, it just stuck in my heart. So that was how we named that one. Jericho Hill is like a rabbit hole of little Easter eggs about Johnny Cash and Live at Folsom Prison, 1968. Every size of every Batola is named for some lyrical reference to that album. And I could bore you to tears with some of the stories and some of the little, things that we include in not only the naming, but in the packaging as well. So there's like 3 stars hidden on every box that we've done. Those represent the 3 stars of Tennessee state flag. On Buckeye land, there's some very small Roman numerals that you probably wouldn't pay attention to, but those Roman numerals actually stand for my wife's physical street address that she grew up in the house in Ohio when she was a kid. Little things like that, I think, just make it interesting and fun.
Do you share all of these stories with?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, they're all wide open. A lot of people just kind of overlook them and don't really take the time to And then other people go down that rabbit hole and they go, oh, that's really cool. I mean, you know, I put it all out there. I used to do a series of YouTube videos when we first started going called the Da Vinci Code. And I would like literally take one brand like J.D. Howard, right? And I would sit there and just babble on about all the different meanings for J.D. Howard and who was J.D. Howard? Why did we name it J.D. Howard? Why is it, why are the numbers 711 on there? Why is it 337 on there? And those are all Easter eggs that are there for people to discover.
And probably not easy to draw a line of where do people actually buy the cigar, the product itself, or whether they buy into the whole story and the packaging.
True. I mean, for me, I think everything has to have a reason to exist. And so I like to create that story to give it that reason. But, you know, ultimately it's got to really start, like I said at the beginning of this, it's got to start with the cigar, with the tobaccos. It's got to be something that I want to smoke, that I am proud of, that, you know, and the rest of that stuff comes later.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Robert, you had a great story regarding playing the drums on a Reddit contest. Bring that up, please. Share it.
Thanks, Reinhard. Hi, John. So on Reddit, a guy who was a big Led Zeppelin fan and a Headley Grange fan ran a contest, put up some kind of video tying in the cigar and Led Zeppelin, and I put it on our PA. I sat down behind our drummer's drums. I played along with the song, and I won a contest. I crown his prize back.
Are you a drummer?
I'm a bass player, but our band studio's in my house, so I just sat behind our drummer's drum set, and I can keep time. You know, I'm a bass player, so I played along when the levee breaks, and I won a contest.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Congrats. There's a movie actually that kind of I learned all this stuff from, called It Might Get Loud. It's with Jimmy Page, Jack White, and The Edge from U2. And there's a scene in there where Jimmy Page goes back into the house, Headley Grange, and he, you know, his whole like thing is that he did like this for the acoustics where the drums were recorded. He goes, the structure of the house is what give the drums that sound. I've seen other things on the internet that say otherwise, that it was, you know, the way they were mic'd or what they did to it. And I don't know, but I'm not that technical of a guy, but I just thought it was an interesting story and a good movie.
You know, there's always these jokes about musicians and drummers, right? Like I'm a drummer myself, but as a drummer, you're always sort of lost between musicians.
I went down that Bonham rabbit hole though when I was doing the Headley Grange project, and God, man, that guy was a phenomenal talent. I mean, some of the stuff that when he was playing like off time, and I was like, I couldn't do it. It's like, you know, the whole can you pat your head, do this thing? It's insane.
Charlie had a great command as well.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got all these funny references and hidden references in all of your boxes and on your product and merchandising. Mm-hmm. I think you missed your calling. You could have been a good spy.
A good spy?
Good spy.
Okay. Probably would have made more money too. I end up dead by now, but that's okay. Dead. Yeah, exactly.
Do you sometimes exchange with Dion on all his conspiracy?
No, I do. He's an interesting cat. You know, he and I we have this kind of like, I don't really talk to him or text him, or we don't stay in touch. But ever since we were on that magazine cover together 8 years ago, it's always that little fraternity that we have. So he'll always like see me at a trade show and he'll be like, just kind of give me like the little nod and then give me a cigar. And I'm like a fanboy. I'm like, oh, thanks, Dion, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, I have a lot of admiration and respect for Dion. If I had the Mount Rushmore of cigar guys, he'd probably be up there.
And speaking about like all these surrounding factors of cigars, music, arts, culture, like you have a lot of merch and apparel, obviously. Where do you factor that in with the entire company?
But luckily, because now having my own company, I guess you have a little bit of creative latitude, and you get to do things that maybe if I was working for another company, they wouldn't let me do. But designing the apparel has always been like, if I wasn't doing cigars, I'd probably be doing that kind of a thing. I get a lot of inspiration. Well, I get all my inspiration, not from the cigar industry, but from outside of the cigar industry. So a lot of like, I'll look at like surf wear, skate wear, all that stuff that speaks to me, streetwear. It all really kind of, it's in my DNA to create and design stuff. So all the hats you see, all the merchandise, all that stuff, that's all me. I hate to sound like that guy. It's all me, but I'm the only one that's goofy enough to want to do it, you know, and in our company. And it's worked well for us. I mean, really the only thing that we have to promote the company aside from social media is the merch. And for some reason, it's developed a pretty strong following to the point where like our merchandise sales sometimes surpass some of the brick and mortar retail sales that we have in the United States. So yeah, it's fun, man. I get a kick out of it. I get as much fun from designing. I've got a file at the office about that thick of finalized designs that I'm just waiting to drop, you know, in season, of hats, mostly hats. And
do you still have some other items on your bucket list that you haven't designed yet or haven't released yet, where you feel like this is something we got to do?
I think I could get in trouble doing t-shirts, you know, because there's so many ideas I have for t-shirts, and I live in t-shirts. I mean, that's all I ever wear. I don't wear collars. But what's held me back from that is just having the whole sizing issue, right? In other words, like hats are one size fits all. I could do, you know, and they don't take a lot of space to inventory carton hats. T-shirts, what I've ran into in the past is like guys asking me for like 4X and 5X in the United States. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, we just went up to 2X. And then they're mad at me because I didn't make a shirt big enough for them. Or then somebody will get a shirt, and if it's an athletic fit, they're like, hey, this doesn't fit me right. And it's a very personal thing. Where hats is just like stick it on your head and forget it, right? Shirts, everybody has a different, you know, vibe, how they want it to fit, how they want it to feel. Should the sleeve be mid bicep or hit the elbow? There's a lot of variables, you know. So I've kind of shied away from that and just stuck to the hats for now.
Did you do as much due diligence work when selecting the companies you wanted to work with for the apparel as you do with the cigars, or do you have specific manufacturers that you work with on that?
Yeah, so I used to work with a company out of Carson, California, out in LA, in that area. And then about 2 years ago, a friend of mine who owns a bunch of bars downtown sent me a hat from one of his bars. And I got the hat and I'm like looking at it, I'm like, wow, the quality is just phenomenal. It's so good. It's like, this is better than a promotional item. This is like, I'd pay for this, right? So I contacted him and found out where he was getting them done. He says, yeah, there's a local rep here. I'm like, really? So I reached out to the rep and I said, hey, would you be interested in coming by? And he said, yeah, absolutely. Comes by like 2 days later and he's got like a duffel bag of hats. And he's like, yeah, you can do anything. And I said, wait a second, I can customize everything. Like I can make the visor one color, do a different button. He says, yeah, he goes, whatever you can design, we can make for you. And you don't have to order more than, you know, say 2 dozen if you wanted. And as soon as that happened, I'm like, oh my God, this is dangerous. We're going to go crazy. And I did. So like everything I do, I just design it like everything is custom. But having that company have a rep right here in my backyard has been like, I couldn't even tell you how many hats I've designed with this manufacturer. I could not tell you because it's that many. In fact, because of the virus, this is the first 30-day period where I didn't purchase new hats from these guys. The first 30 days in 2 years. So yeah, it's great to work with them. And then I also have a little arrangement with a company called New Era. New Era do all the on-field baseball hats for Major League Baseball. And one of their VPs and I have been friends for, God, a dozen years. And he was a fan of CAO, and now he's a fan of Crowned Heads. So I send him cigars, and he'll be like, you need some hats done? I'm like, yeah. So what's ironic is our most expensive sought-after hats are hats that we just have a scholarship arrangement for. I never really like have to purchase the hats per se. We just do a little barter. So it's kind of fun. It's like I said, if I wasn't doing cigars, I'd probably be doing that, because ever since I was a kid, I collected baseball hats. I loved hats since I was a kid. Like it's probably going back to when I was like 4, 5, 6. had a
And I'm pretty
collection.
sure you also design all of your tattoos that you have on, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's all a whole life story thing, and there's this, and then there's this, and then there's these, and yeah.
We had a super interesting question regarding the tattoos. If you could wear any of your brand logos for life, which one would it be and why?
So it can't just be the Crown Heads logo. It has to be like one of the cigars underneath Crown Heads. I'd probably just say, you know, go with the obvious and probably, which I don't have any Crown Heads tattoos. I have CAO tattoos, but I don't have Crown Heads tattoos, which is interesting. I'd probably say, if I can't just do the graphic of the Crown Heads logo, I'd probably say like Las Calaveras, just because it's, you know, what that brand means to me, and the whole sugar skull thing and the remembrance of people that have passed away before us. It's probably the deepest meaning to me than any brand that we've done.
No Opus X like Pete has.
No Opus X. I wouldn't do that. No, although it's a cool logo, but I wouldn't.
And we had a question from Ian, I think, regarding the Opus X. Do you have any thoughts on that?
What's the question? I'm sorry.
That was
Go ahead, Ian.
you were talking about cigars which are overpowering. I haven't had many Opus X, and I found I had a Petty Corona, and that was about all I could handle. It was so intense. I just wonder if Opus X is one of the cigars that you find on the heavy end, that you don't smoke that often.
I remember when the brand came out, I just started in the industry, and the buzz that brand generated was unlike anything. It was like, you know, oh, a cigar that was actually the wrappers grown in the Dominican Republic. It was so hard to get at that time. Like, one of our retailers in Nashville actually got a few boxes, and they limited 2 per customer per day, that kind of a thing. And I remember smoking Opus and going, again, this had such a distinct flavor profile to me, right? It was, and I think Pete kind of described it best for me. It was like cinnamon raisin toast. And I remember as a kid, like cinnamon raisin toast, there was a certain smell that it had. And when you smell the foot of this Opus X, at least back then, it smelled like cinnamon raisin toast. And it was one of those cigars that I could smoke even to this day. We take the band off, I'll light it up, smoke it, and I'm like, that's an Opus. There's something so unique about it. And I think that's why it's kind of stood the test of time. To your point, though, Ian, I have had one cigar that almost made me, like, you know, throw up. Like, you know, people talk about getting the head spins and all that kind of stuff. I've never had a cigar do that except for an Opus X Power Ranger. That was the only cigar that's ever made me to the point where, like, I think I need to go to the bathroom and be sick. And I didn't get sick, but it got me pretty close. It was heavy. Like, whoa, God. I mean, I'll smoke any of our cigars before breakfast. It doesn't bother me. But that one cigar, whew, that was heavy. That's the only one. It's funny you bring that up, but yeah, Opus X Power Ranger almost got me sick. 1997.
Steve had a comment on the tattoo answer.
Yeah. Hi, John.
Hey, Steve. Where are you?
Hi. It was my friend Andy who raised the question about the tattoo.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he's had to leave. But he would be super chuffed with your answer. And I think that he would probably go for a tattoo himself. I would wonder whether you would join him.
I would. Here's the thing. I would probably have more tattoos right now than you see, but I made a pact with my wife a while ago. Yeah, I was like, we got married. It was like, she's like, okay, no more tattoos. I'm like, whatever. So the last ones that I got were these, right? This was her name, so she green-lighted that one, and this is our daughter's name, Alexandra. And it's funny because to talk her into that, I told her, I said, I want to get, you know, your name and AJ's name on my hands. I really wanted to get my hands done. She's like, oh, don't do that. Don't do that. I said, well, I'll try to do it right here on the side, you know, this little kind of thing here. So she's like, okay, well, I guess so, you know, because then you couldn't see it like that. So I get to my tattoo artist, and he says, no, don't do the side because it doesn't wear well. He goes, you're going to have to do it on top. And I'm like, okay, go for it. And I remember sending her the pictures after I was done. She's like, oh, my God. She goes, your whole hands are covered. I'm like, yeah, doesn't it look great? You know, and she was just, at first she was put off, but when she realized, well, hell, it's her name and our daughter's name, it wasn't that big of a deal. So, but those are the last ones I've had. Otherwise, I would love to get more stuff done. I'm an addict when it comes to tattoos.
It's completely the opposite for me.
Really?
I am uninked, completely uninked.
You're different than most people now have ink, and now it's not a sign of rebellion. It's a sign of rebellion not to have ink. So
very much so, and actually that's the reason why.
There you go.
But my wife has been trying to talk me into a tattoo for years. She likes ink. I have lots of friends who like ink, and I love the look of tattoos. But it's just a road I'm not going to go down, I think, because it's unusual. And I like to be unusual.
It is unusual not to have nowadays. When I first started off, to have a tattoo is very rebellious. It was very like unheard of. And if you had one below the sleeve line, that was unheard of. Nobody did that. And that's actually how Pete and I became friends. Because in 1996, we were at a trade show in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I had just gotten my first tattoos below the sleeve. And he walked by, and he had his whole sleeve. And we kind of like looked at each other. We were the only two in the building that had tattoos. It was kind of one of these things like, what's up? Hey, man, what's going on? So he comes over, you know, and, oh, you're from LA? Yeah, I used to live in LA. You know, that thing. And we became fast friends since then. And now, you know, I've had more tattoos done, but that's initially how Pete and I bonded, was over tattoos.
Jon, going back to the very beginning, and to these smell and scent memories that you described, because you just spoke about that raisiny aroma that stuck with you. Do you still have like that one memory from your grandfather or from these childhood days that you will always carry with you for your life, and that you at some point probably want to factor into a cigar?
The first answer is yes, I do have tons of those memories. The second answer is it'd be kind of hard to get that translated into a cigar, I suppose. But the things that I remember was, you know, like I said, working in the soil and the dirt. And I remember the cheap cans of beer that he used to always put salt in the beer, and it would foam up, and you would taste the salt in the beer, that salty taste. Just different, you know, just those are like fond memories. I mean, my grandfather, he raised me basically. My grandparents raised me, and he passed away when I was 16, and it was just like, I mean, that was a long time ago, and it still rocks my world. Like, I just kind of every day I think about him. And then when I was 17, I left home to go to school. So it was very much like, you know, going from fourth gear to like first gear, and next thing I knew, I was out of the house when I was 17 years old. But yeah, tons of good memories about my grandfather. He's my number one role model to this day.
Jon, this has been such a wonderful session, and probably the most intimate and personal one that we ever had with Light 'Em Up.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody. Like, I don't know what time it is where y'all are, but it's nice of you to stay up late and hang out. It was a joy. And anytime you want to do it again, I'll be at the ready. So
thank you so much. And we fully appreciate that. And I really feel like you gave us a little glimpse into your soul and into the soul of your cigars, because I feel like hardly any other person that we all met through Light 'Em Up and that I have met in the cigar industry, it's so obvious that your personal story and the way you feel from hearts is translated into the product and into the entire company. And I think that's just wonderful to hear. And it's been a mesmerizing experience for me. So I can't thank you.
It means a lot to me, Reinhard. I really appreciate that. And again, like, I appreciate you guys actually waiting up and sitting up and hanging out. So you know where to find me. If you ever want to do it again, it's a pleasure. I love to talk about this stuff. So, and then you also had a glimpse into the Barbie office too as well. So anyway,
Amazon deliver a new Barbie for tomorrow to pay for your room use.
I know, right? And shoot, I know. I got to go check on that little one too. It's weird. I don't know how everybody's been in, you know, with this whole pandemic thing, but like I said, this is week 5 working from the house, and you know, I hear stories about, oh, I'm losing my mind. To me, it's really been a breath of fresh air to be able to be here and be with my wife and my daughter, and I love spending the time. And like, you know, it's challenging to work from home, but oh, come here. But in the same regard. It's lovely to have. Come here, say hi. This is my daughter AJ. I'm in her office, so it's lovely to have access to this and say hi to everybody.
Hi.
Say hello.
Hi.
Who's your favorite Barbie, AJ?
Who's your favorite Barbie? Do you have a favorite Barbie?
A Barbie dream house.
But which one is your favorite Barbie? Do you have a specific one that's your favorite?
I want a soda.
All right, go get it real quick. So yeah, it's been fun. You know, try to make the best of the situation, and I've only smoked like 3 cigars since I've been home, but nonetheless, I still have this as a plus. It's okay, honey. Anyway, those your favorites? Okay.
You have a dog at home, John?
Pardon me?
You have a dog at home?
We do. We have a dog and 2 cats.
Well, you know, this whole pandemic thing was started by the dogs getting together and wanting to keep their masters home.
I believe that. I tell you, it's going to be an awkward transition to go back to that whole pre-COVID thing. I mean, I don't know. I'm just taking it day by day. You know, I've had cigars sent to the house to validate samples and stuff like that. But for the most part, I've actually enjoyed being able to be here and just, you know, and be around my wife and my kid. I think I'm going to miss them a lot if I have to go back to the office.
Our only worry is not to run out of butane.
I never use butane. Never use it.
You're a tree killer, huh?
No, you know what I use? I'm not an accessory guy in terms of cigars, right? I mean, and that all goes back to when I first started out in the business, I would, you know, at trade shows, people would give you lighters and cutters and this and that. And I had a whole drawer full of stuff, even like DuPonts, nice stuff. And then I went to my first experience of going to a factory was in the late 90s. And I remember sitting with Nestor Plasencia. And I'm like, you know, like, what am I doing here? This is like, I'm out of my league. And I watched all these guys, Nestor, I watched, you know, various cigar guys pinch the cigar and light it with a Bic. And then ever since then, to this day, I don't really use accessories. I use either a Bic or the Jeep. And, you know, if I don't use my hands, I'll just use a simple cutter, nothing fancy. I figure if it's good enough for those guys, you know, who am I to like have a fancy triple flame, all this crazy stuff. So I'm pretty bare bones when it comes to that stuff.
John, I'm pretty sure that you will gain a lot of passionate ambassadors and followers just from this conversation. And rest assured, you already have a passionate followership, even over here in Europe, where a lot of us ladies and gentlemen are, but we have a lot of US guys joining us as well, like Charlie, of course, and we truly appreciate you all joining us for these Light 'em Up sessions. And
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure that a lot of positive things will come out of this, as you described, John, with your family. And again, I can only say thank you for giving us that glimpse into your world, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Please continue your wonderful work, and we wish you all the very best for the.
Thank you. The pleasure's been all mine. Absolutely. Hope to do it again soon. Take care, everybody. Have a good evening.
All the very best to you, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.